Hello everyone. This is going to be an introduction to the next section on epistemology, and what I'm going to do is just kind of introduce this topic and point to what we're going to be looking at in this section in a general way. So to begin, what we're going to do here is just to give you an overview of the course section. In this there's 3 modules, like the previous thing where you did a section where you did your paper on. And the first one is an introduction in epistemology, and this is what I'm going to discuss here, is some of the basic ideas of it. And then there's a section on theories of truth, which is going to be the main work we'll end up doing here. And then there's a section on social media and truth, and that's where the basis of the paper is going to be. So for this lesson, though, right now, what I'm going to do is give you a short introduction, explanation of what the concept of knowledge is, which is a fundamental idea that goes all the way back to Plato. So to begin here, what we're doing is this is an idea that goes back to Plato, the idea of what epistemology is and what knowledge is. And as the slide shows, epistemology and philosophy is studying human knowledge, what's its limits, what it is, how we justify our knowledge, where does it come from, those type of questions. Anything really to do with what is the nature of knowledge and what can be known is part of epistemology. And initially here's Plato, and this was a discussion that started by him in the Theaetetus, which is one of your readings. And what he discussed was he wanted to know what counts as knowledge. So, because that's what Socrates was looking for. He wanted to know knowledge of all these different things, what things were, like justice and friendship, what love was. These were the big concepts that he wanted to know. Socrates claimed he didn't know them, so he would go around and ask people in the Platonic dialogues what they thought there were, and then Socrates would basically tear them all apart and show that they didn't know what they were talking about. So at some point, Plato had to explain what he meant by knowledge, or what Socrates meant by knowledge, and this gives us our foundation for epistemology right up through current times in philosophy. And it starts off with a belief. All knowledge is a belief, and a belief is, you can say it as a statement. I believe X, and whatever X is, that's your belief. So I believe the sun is out, or I believe it is rainy. You don't know it, it's just a belief. I believe that all people should be given free education. That's a belief I have. It's not knowledge, it's a statement of a belief. But knowledge starts at that point. It is a belief. Now, the second criteria is fairly commonsensical, really. If you have a belief and you want to claim it's knowledge, the first thing it's got to be is it's got to be true. So you can't say you know something if it turns out the belief you're talking about is false. So if I say I believe the Earth is the closest planet in our solar system to the sun, well, it's a belief, but it's not a true belief. We're the 3rd planet closest to the sun. So to have knowledge means that you have a belief that is in fact true. And then you are required to have justification. So, which is Plato's entire definition of knowledge. Knowledge is a justified, true belief, and you have to be able to justify why you think your belief is true. So it must be true, but then you have to have your belief. And what this diagram illustrates here is that knowledge is a subset of the beliefs that are true. So they're beliefs, and some beliefs are true, some are false. There are some truths that we know, which are our beliefs, but some that we don't know. There's things we don't know about the universe or the world or anything, about people. So but they are truths, they're independent of us. So we're looking at that overlap between beliefs and true beliefs, where those true beliefs lie. That's where knowledge is going to lie. But there may be true beliefs, but they don't necessarily count as knowledge unless we have that justification. So that middle circle there is where we're going to find knowledge, because that's the justified true beliefs, and that's what counts as knowledge. Now, this definition of knowledge as justified true belief excuse me, stood until around the mid-1960s, and a philosopher named Edmund Gettier raised the problem that, somebody may look out a window and see their friend drive away in a red car, and they would think, oh, okay, Tom, Sarah, whoever owns a red car, and consider that knowledge. They're justified. I saw them drive away. There's no problem with it. It is a true belief. In fact, Tom or Sarah or whoever actually does own a red car. So for the person to say, yes, I have knowledge, it makes sense. But if we realize that what Tom or Sarah or whoever this friend was that drove away in a red car, that car was actually their boss's car who asked them to go, can you run over to the airport and pick me up? Here's my keys, I'll leave them on my desk. You drive them over there. And it happens to be a red car. The justifications would seem to work. I saw them in a red car. They might have even told me I had a red car. So the not justification is there, but in this case, it seems that there's something wrong with that kind of justification, and that the justification just isn't there. So maybe knowledge isn't always justified true belief. And that's actually, it was a paper that was 2 pages long, and that has spun off into a huge debate in philosophy. How do you solve the Gettier problem? But for most people, we go back to the definition that's listed up above. Knowledge is a justified true belief, and we're happy with it. And outside of that little area of the Gettier problem, which isn't so little in epistemology, that's everybody's accepted that. That's where we do. So now, the question though becomes one of 2 things. First, what is truth? So how do we know when a statement is true? And the idea here is that, well, truth could be what is that true belief is one that matches with the way the world is. It corresponds to the world. This is the correspondence theory. But we can't always have this correspondence between our beliefs in the world, because sometimes we talk about theoretical things that may or may not exist quite the way we are, but we're sure they're knowledge, because our beliefs fit within a system so well and so perfectly that the entire system kind of gives it support. So all the other beliefs we have support that one particular belief. This is the coherence theory, and those are the 2 main views of what truth actually is. There's another one that's pretty well accepted, is called the pragmatic theory of truth. Belief is true as long as it continues to work. If people are able to act on it and act in ways they expect, then it's a true belief. Whether it matches the world or not, we don't really worry about it. It actually works. So a statement that helps us do things in the world would be considered true for the pragmatic theory. We're not going to look at that. We're only going to look at the coherence theory of truth and the correspondence theory of truth. Now, real quickly, there is one other issue that comes up. This is the idea of what is justification, and this is the problem of justification. And this is the other big side of the question of what justified true belief is. And there are 2 basic theories of this. One is that our beliefs are based on our sense experiences. At some fundamental level, somebody experienced whatever we're talking about. Somebody saw it, they felt it, they heard it, they tasted it. Somehow, someone's sense experience is where we get the source of the justification for our knowledge. And the idea here is that we start as a blank slate, so the only way we can have any knowledge is if we experience things. So our experiences, or the experiences that other people have had that are then shared with us, that's the basis of justification. This is the view of empiricism. Contrasted to this is the idea of rationalism. And since we can't always trust our senses, we're always deceived by them, the rationalists say that's probably not the best thing to rely on our senses and experience then for justifying our knowledge. Instead, we need to something that's more certain and absolute. And what they turn to is the rules of logical reasoning or mathematics, things like definitions of terms. So the idea that all bachelors are male. Well, I don't have to experience every single bachelor in the world and that will ever exist at any time. I know if this is a bachelor, it is a male. That's true by definition, and I know that because I understand the definition. So the justification isn't on the experience I have, but on the concept itself, and I can logically deduce that without any experience whatsoever. Now, both of these sides, empiricism and rationalism, we'll say, yes, we eventually do use logic and reasoning if you're an empiricist, or you use experience if you're a rationalist. But at the fundamental level of justification, you have to trace it back to one of those two. So for empiricists, it's traced back to someone's experience at some point. It's the only way we can justify knowledge. For the rationalists, they argue no, you have to trace it back to something that we know absolutely for certain, either by reason or by intuition. So they'll talk about innate ideas, or by concepts that we know by definition. And you can also throw in mathematical truths there, because we will never have perfect triangles, but we know all the interior angles of a triangle will sum up to 180 degrees. That's just the way geometry works. So we don't, even though we can't produce a perfect triangle, and if you get the absolute finest measuring tool ever, we'll never be able to get one that's perfectly that way, but we know as a mathematical concept that's the case. So that's what rationalism looks at for those type of things. So for what we're going to do, we're going to turn to the problems of what is true and focus on that in this course.